What does ASH stand for? But let me guess. Just tell me if I get a word wrong. Aryan...
Stop.
Okay.
ASH stands for Action on Smoking and Health.
Why shouldn't people be allowed to smoke where they want?
Why shouldn't people be allowed to masturbate where they want?
I ask myself that question every day.
Stephen Colbert and I were like the two new guys in the show. So I was Colbert's producer. I knew right away that Stephen was like such a special guy because he
was coming from Dana Carvey's show, so he had and Second City.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like he didn't have a background. I mean, he was like already a legend. We just got to know each other really quick, and he said, "All right, let's find a good story. Let's go out there." And I found like the perfect first story.
Wow!
It was a warden at a prison in Utah, and the warden was getting afraid of the inmates because all they would do all day is lift weights, and they were getting so muscle bound that he was afraid that they would mutiny and he would get beaten to a pulp. So he decided to remove all the weightlifting equipment and hire a gourmet chef. So then the inmates were upset because they were getting fat. So we went out to Utah, and back then no one knew who we were. Like you would go, we told them the name of the show was The Daily Show. What channel are you on? Channel 53. Or 54.
Cable. Yeah.
What network are we on? We would say, either Time Warner or Viacom because we were owned by half of them. But as long as we didn't say we were Comedy Central, we weren't lying. We just weren't telling them we were a comedy show. So they had no idea that we were trying to be funny, which went a long way to making these pieces work because there's nothing less funny than people trying to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, we didn't want people to be in on a joke. We wanted to approach these stories like you were doing like a real news broadcast. So we went to this prison in Utah, and let me tell you, there's no better feeling than getting out of a prison at the end of the day.
And that is Evan Cutler, and you've tuned into another episode of Comedy History 101, where we school you in comedy. I am Harmon. Hello. And Evan was a field producer for The Daily Show during the glory years. He started during the Craig Kilborn era and transitioned into the Jon Stewart regime. Evan was hired the very same week as Stephen Colbert and produced Colbert's very earliest Daily Show segments, along with Steve Carell. In fact, Evan produced Steve Carell's very first Daily Show piece that got him hired. And we are going to do a deep dive into the glory years of The Daily Show. Again, trekking its origin story from Craig Kilborn into Jon Stewart, transitioning into when The Daily Show became the modern Daily Show we know it today. A few things you'll learn from this episode: how Jon Stewart changed The Daily Show and comedy itself, how Craig Kilborn was hired to play the Ted Baxter of The Daily Show and simply read the jokes. We'll hear the story of unknown Steve Carell and how he got his big break. And we'll discover what Stephen Colbert was like before the world got to know him. And particularly, we'll learn about the ill-fated John McEnroe talk show that pulled off television's almost impossible 0.0 TV rating. But before we jump into the episode, a few quick plugs. On Thursday, August 20th, 7 p.m. at Young Ethel's, I'll be presenting my show, That 80s Improv Challenge. 3 improv teams compete by creating scenes based on obscure videos from the 1980s. And on August 27th, Thursday, 8 o'clock, at the Pine Box Rock Shop in Brooklyn, I'll be presenting my show, AI versus Human Roast Battle. Come out and see a human rapper take on a machine learning AI in a comedy roast battle of tomorrow. And the next night on August 28th, Friday, 7:30 at the Red Room, of course, I'll be presenting my show, Tale, NYC's finest storytelling. No hokey gimmicks, no dumb themes. Tale brings you the best in New York storytelling. And you can find out all about my show dates on my site, harmonleon.com, or on the social medias at Harmon Leon. Also, like, subscribe, comment, share an episode with a friend of Comedy History 101. Give us no less than 5 stars on iTunes or Spotify. Every little bit helps, and we love bringing you these episodes, much like the one today where we tell you these fascinating stories of comedy history. And you can follow our show or comment on our site, comedyhistory101.com, or follow us on Instagram at comedyhist101. And now, without further ado,
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone! Excuse me!
Comedy History 101.
just to jump right in, you got me going down a rabbit hole yesterday. And can you confirm that there was once a late night talk show to rival Conan and Letterman that starred tennis great John McEnroe?
Tennis great / late night great John McEnroe.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked on a lot of shows in my career, but that is the book. If I ever do write a book, it's my experience with John McEnroe.
And now, the host of our show, ladies and gentlemen, people of Earth, John McEnroe!
What would be chapter 1 of the book? Like, what, here's just a question. What do you think about when you enter a project like that?
Well, I adore John, and he was one of my heroes growing up. And he's only a few years older than me. So when I had seen him when he filled in for David Letterman when Letterman was having his heart surgery. I don't know if you remember, but for about a month or so after Letterman took the time off, he had guest hosts every night. And John hit it out of the park. And based on that performance alone, at least somebody in the NBC Brain Trust thought, let's give him his own late night show. And for what the big puzzle was, you know, when I got the call, you know, everything sounded like a great idea until they said what network it was on. And, you know, the answer was CNBC, which to me is normally not the channel you think of when it comes to late night comedy.
Yeah, so there's very few clips of it online, but there's one kind of clip of failed comedy sketches that appeared, and I could see those comedy sketches working for like a Letterman or a Conan, but at the helm, leading the comedy charge, is tennis great John McEnroe.
Hello?
Is Tony Randall there, please?
Mr. Randall died last week.
Oh.
Well, I mean, John was all in. Like when he rarely said no to anything. The only thing he really said no to was how we went off the air. From the beginning, he was like, listen, I'm not a late night guy. I'm not a comedy guy, but he embraced the idea of it. And he actually bought his house in Malibu from Johnny Carson. So there was that.
Which incidentally, I have interviewed a man who lived next door to Johnny Carson and wrote a book about it. So I'm familiar with that.
So this
house.
is adjacent in a different way.
There's so many different parallels of past guests that I'm going to ask you about. You know, starting with
part of the deal with the contract was, I think it was like 5 tennis lessons because Johnny was a big tennis fan. Yeah. So it was one of those things where at the time I was working I left the Daily Show and then went to Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn. And then got a call from CNN to start a show. I was on the original team with Anderson Cooper, which is not exactly a comedy show, but for me, they were trying to do something a little different, and they wanted a comedy element to it. And I was at CNN for maybe like 4 months, and then out of the blue, I got a call about McEnroe. And I asked Anderson, I go, I hate to jump ship so quickly. And he's like, oh, I would do it in a second. So if you're of a certain age, nothing is cooler than McEnroe. He is like not only the great tennis player, but also like, guitar player, art dealer. I mean, Renaissance man, married to, Patty Smythe from Scandal. He like
He hooked
everything going.
Lars Ulbricht from Metallica up with Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Yes, yes. And we had Lars on the show. We had
Yeah.
every possible guest you can imagine.
Tonight on McEnroe, actor Will Ferrell, musical legend Sting, Patty Smythe and the band.
Everybody like either owed John a favor because he was like he never says no when it comes to something that's like charitable. I guess the other thing is like people just wanted to meet John because it's like he's like one of the icons of pop culture.
Maybe he was like the original rock star of tennis, or one of them. With I forgot the Swedish guy that he was.
Be on
always-
board.
Yeah. Those were
Yes.
like the rock stars.
Yeah. So when we started, it was very much like the premise, the idea for that the CNBC brass gave us was like, listen, we know John is not a late night guy, but he's like the best color commentator, so he has great insight, when it comes to sports, and also he is a great guest. So whenever he's on another show, he's going to deliver. So what we basically will do, the idea was the guests would interview him.
Okay, got it. That's a switch.
Yeah, which made no sense, and the show didn't. From the very start, the very first night we had Will Ferrell as our first guest. So like you're right off the bat, I thought what wasn't the best idea, because if you start at the top and you put all your instead of
Eggs in the
building an
basket.
audience and letting it go organic, instead if you like everyone comes the first night and then you realize that the guy's maybe not ready or not 100%, then they're not going to come back again.
Like, okay, two questions. Who else was on the writing staff, and where did those writers go on to? And second, how did it all really go off the rails?
Well, no writing staff, because it wasn't based as a late night show. I mean, it was based as a late night show, but it was based.
Wasn't John, friend of Comedy History 101, John Fugelsang? Wasn't
John Fugelsang was hired as the sidekick before John McEnroe.
Okay.
So
they had a sidekick without a
host. Yes.
Okay.
So McEnroe right away is like, listen, this doesn't make any sense. There was no chemistry test. There was no nothing.
Yeah.
So like right away, John went into it a little bit like skeptical about the whole thing. So that did not gel the traditional sort of Carson mold sidekick. We talked John out of doing a monologue and out of doing the traditional kind of show, which took a lot of like effort, because he wanted to
crack jokes.
He wanted to be Johnny, but on the other hand, he was super fearful of, like, his biggest fear was the magic hour or Chevy. Like anytime he brought up,
I was going to bring that up, of the classic, really off the rails, which we've done an episode on the Chevy Chase show, which is
How could you have a history
and the magic hour just to put people in it was a talk show with Magic Johnson,
comedy great Magic Johnson.
Yes.
So we finally talked John out of doing a monologue, and it's the night before our first show, and we're in a conference room with John, just going over like sort of the lay of the land. And his assistant knocks on the door saying, "You have a call from Jay Leno." And John goes, "I'll take it here." And he was expecting the call. He put on speakerphone. He wanted us to all hear it. And it was Jay sort of like congratulating him for what he's about to do and welcoming to the family. He's like, "John, listen, there's only like 6 of us in the world who do this. It's an honor. It's like, you're going to be in these people's living rooms every night." And he's like, "Quick question. Are you going to do a monologue?" And John is like, "No, these guys talked me out of doing a monologue." And Jay said, No, do a monologue. He goes, "People's lives are miserable. They work hard. They're in bed. They have maybe like a half hour before they go to bed. They just want a few jokes. Just tell a few jokes." So hangs up the phone. John turns around and says, "All right, we're doing a monologue." And we were not prepared. So all of a sudden I'm like, all right, how do we none of us are like joke writers. Like we are like the senior staff come from all different worlds. I was the only one who really came from a comedy world. So I called a friend at SNL, and they said, "Well, at Weekend Update, we have this system where we have," this is how old this is, like 2000, and it was when Kerry was running. So 2004. What SNL does, they have these comedy writers that our freelance agents faxed in zingers and jokes
Wow.
for Weekend Update. So I got the names of all of them and was literally got a fax machine with a dedicated phone number and was getting, like, that morning, people writing, sending in jokes. Big problem though. Well, John, usually it takes like, years until a comedian hones like 3 minutes to do a spot on a late night show. Here's John all of a sudden like going to do a monologue
Learning on
every
the
single night.
job.
Learning on the job.
How
Yeah,
are the ratings?
Oh, put it this way: we had Triumph the Insult Comic Dog on once.
Okay.
Towards the end, sort of to roast him, and I'm in the room with Smigel, and we're going over like trying to create jokes to make fun of John, and there it just been in the news that our ratings that past week we got a 0.0, which is almost impossible. Like
Yeah.
literally, like.
That
No
means
matter
like
what, there's
negative
always-
people were watching.
always just like one person who like rolls over on their clicker while
Yeah.
they're asleep, and at
Yeah.
least like it turns on CNBC. You have something. We had nobody. So that ratings were so bad that it was almost like negative people. So we did not last long. And John got the word when he was at a tennis tournament that the show was canceled, and he wanted
Did he
to
throw his racket? But going back, is your roots stand-up comedy? How did you get involved with comedy? Let's go back in the way back machine.
Well, if we want to go way back,
Yeah,
Mad
yeah.
Magazine. When I was a kid,
Mad Magazine?
Mad Magazine is
Like working on the staff or
no,
or
as
just
a
reading?
kid.
Oh, okay.
I'm
So
going
so
into-
many
going-
people I've interviewed have had Mad Magazine both as an influence or they end up on staff or writing for it.
Yeah. No, I was totally into Mad Magazine, and I was really into this TV show that we got in New Jersey, a public access show called The Uncle Floyd Show.
Direct from the studios at Channel 68, it's The Uncle Floyd Show, starring Uncle Floyd. I'm John Pichettino, along with insane Bob Dodlin and the WTVG All-Star Kazoo Band, inviting you to join Uncle Floyd and his guests, Oogie, Don Ho-Hum, and the Cinema International.
I've gone down that rabbit hole a little bit on YouTube, so I'm vaguely familiar with it. Because we did an episode on Stairway to Stardom, which was another great
Sort of
NYC.
like that, yeah.
Yeah. But it was in the same ballpark, so I'm familiar.
Yeah, so this was based out of New Jersey. Did a lot of parodies, song parodies, guest parodies. They had a whole and it was such a fun little world. And it was so like, if they could do it, I could do it. So I sort of was brought up thinking like I could someday do this. The other thing is I would also write movie parodies as a kid. I would like put all the people in my class in play, like turn a movie, but have everybody be the roles in the movie.
Yeah.
And so I was always doing that sort of thing. In college, I started a version of what turned out to be The Onion. I mean, it wasn't The Onion, but it was before The Onion, but it could have been The Onion. So I had that all going for me. But then I went into magazines. So I was a magazine journalist working with some of the top magazines in the country.
What magazines were you working for? Because but again, my background's magazines as well, and journalism. So always familiar with the magazine world.
My last job before I worked in TV was I was an editor at Harper's Bazaar.
Okay, gotcha.
My corner office faced Letterman. So I would all day long, I would see what was going on in front of the Ed Sullivan Theater at 1700 Broadway. Yeah. But it kept tearing at me that my career was basically writing about other people's accomplishments. And I wanted to be the one being interviewed like I am right now. It's like, I don't want to be the person who is just like, just hearing what other people have done. And then one day I saw a little news clipping in the New York Times about how Microsoft and NBC News were combining forces to create this new network called MSNBC. So I cold called the press department at NBC News, and I was able to get a phone number for the office, called them, got an interview. They loved the fact that I had never worked in TV before. I never even owned a TV. And got the job working with this guy, RJ Cutler, who's a legendary.
How do I know that name? The name sounds familiar.
He's done a lot of big docs.
Okay, What was his biggest? That's how I know him from
the biggest. Well, I knew him from he had done a documentary about James Carville and George Stephanopoulos running during Clinton's campaign.
Did he recently do the Belushi documentary?
Yes.
Okay, that's how I know. Yeah.
Yeah, he did the Belushi. He did the September issue. But he had done a show on NPR called Heat with John Hockenberry. So the two of them reunited to do this show on MSNBC. So they gave him a show which was an hour long, do it in front of a live audience. No, it wasn't in front of a live audience, but an hour long show with live guests, interviews, panels, live music, and then short films. So I was hired to do the short films. So I went around the country and did these short films, and I had never done this before at all. And
you and McEnroe learning on the job.
Totally learning on the job. And the very first one I did, I kept thinking that the producer didn't know what he was doing, and we came back with nothing. And then the producer pulled a sickie. He just disappeared, and the piece had to air that week. So RJ said, "You're a smart guy. Go into the edit room and work with the editor and figure it out."
Find the story.
We made it work. It was a home run. And then RJ said, "This is what I'm going to do. People are going to hate me here, but I'm going to have you jump over all the other people, the associate producers and all, and make you a producer. But you have to do the research. You have to do all the legwork. You are a one-man show," which was great because I learned on the fly how to do a field segment. And it was nice. We didn't have correspondence. So it was these were all verite short films, and I would go all over the country doing them. And I really learned how to become a filmmaker. The Princess Diana crash happened. All of a sudden, MSNBC ratings went through the roof. And it was just from people talking on camera about something. So it went from our ratings were terrible. And then all of a sudden their ratings were through the roof, and you were just people talking heads. So overnight, the whole climate of cable news changed, and it became talking heads instead of original programming and filmmaking. So we were out of a job within a month of that. But I had a great reel. I had, and I was the quirky guy. I was did the funny pieces. So I went to The Daily Show, which had just started.
Yeah, so was it the first year? And once again, that it started roughly 1997, if my reading online articles is correct.
Yes, pretty accurate. So this was season 2 of The Daily Show.
To back up and inform people, what was The Daily Show to you in season 1? What did that show mean to you?
Well, I had actually interviewed before they launched. And in fact, I thought The Daily Show was just a placeholder if they came up with a real name for the show. I saw the thing, I'm interviewing to be a researcher on a show called The Daily Show. And
okay. The irony was completely lost on you.
Yes, completely lost on me.
But what was it done? I mean, the history was
so the first year of the show,
Politically Incorrect on Comedy Central, and that jumped ship to ABC. So there was a big hole in that kind of.
So Madeline Smithberg and Liz Winstead were tasked with creating a show to replace Politically Incorrect, and they wanted to have a nightly show. And their idea was, let's do a parody of a nightly news broadcast.
The Daily Show with Craig Kilborn.
Crucify him! Crucify him!
It's got politics.
I'd ask you more questions about Bob Dole, but you don't know who he is.
Listen, you got all these crackpots running for president.
Insightful interviews.
You do your own stuff.
Yeah.
I do my own makeup.
And, of course, thought-provoking commentary.
By the way, I used to listen to Bon Jovi.
You're kidding.
Well,
do you know you're on TV?
The Daily Show. All the news you need explained.
He's just, I've got a word for it, but I've forgotten it.
Only on Comedy Central.
And let's have a host who is sort of like a Ted Baxter mold. Somebody who is super handsome, obsessed with his looks, and basically just reads whatever's on the prompter. and Craig Kilborn was that guy, that he played that character.
I'm Craig Kilborn, anchor of The Daily Show, and I know lots of words.
The Daily Show, every Monday through Thursday at 11, only at Comedy Central.
ESPN's Craig Kilborn at the time.
Yes.
They hired him almost to be kind of like Peter Graves in Airplane, or Leslie Nielsen in Airplane, just to be
Ted Baxter from the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Okay, got it.
Like to be that, or later on, with what do you call it? God, I'm drawing a blank. What's the show with?
Cheers?
The movie.
The movie.
No, with Will Ferrell, where he plays the Anchorman.
Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah,
so it was sort of before Anchorman. So the first year of the show, they totally succeeded. It was like a very frat boy kind of like vibe with Kilborn, and the field pieces on that show, they were sort of mock. It was mainly making fun of people, like
Right.
the field pieces were sort of like parodies of 60 Minutes. Were basically felt like local news kind of stuff, and they were mostly like quirky characters. Like I remember there was a guy who thought that dentistry was overpriced and a real ripoff, so he was able to make dentures out of the gravel in his driveway. So it was all like, people like weren't in on the joke, but you were making fun of them and like, here, look at these
little
idiots.
bit of a punching down.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I came in, they liked the fact that I had this journalism background, that I was a writer, I had been a magazine journalist, and then I'd come from cable news. So almost everybody on the staff there came from the world of comedy. Like a lot of stand-ups, and a lot of the producers came from like either like MTV, VH1 world. So I was like the only one there really who had the tools and knew how to had the devices where I knew like the back of my hand how to produce a news package. So I'm like, I'm gonna go, and I didn't have that comedy background. I knew I was a funny guy and I had a good sensibility, but I wasn't a joke writer. So I sort of went in like, okay, we will do these stories just like 60 Minutes, but we will approach them at such a weird angle or find such interesting characters that will make it work in a different way than it was before that. So I started the same week as almost the same week, maybe a little bit before, but it was Stephen Colbert and I were like the two new guys in the show.
Why shouldn't people be allowed to smoke where they want?
Why shouldn't people be allowed to masturbate where they want?
I ask myself that question every day.
So I was Colbert's producer he was the first piece I did.
And something really funny that, just researching today, like his gig right before that was a non-ironic anchor or correspondent role on Good Morning America, which he did a total of one piece.
It is the 9th annual National Rube Goldberg Machine Contest at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. And joining me from there is our Steve Colbert. Steve, for those who don't know, you ought to remind people who Rube Goldberg was and what he did.
Well, good morning, Charlie. Rube Goldberg was a cartoonist who made his career satirizing modern technology.
Well, I think he did more than I think only one aired. I think the others were just like never even made air.
It was like a Rube Goldberg competition where he had a non-ironically asked engaging questions.
With me is Frank Zagari and the team from Hofstra University and their machine Stereo Madness. Frank, as quickly as you can, tell us what it does.
But I knew right away that Stephen was like such a special guy because he
was coming from Dana Carvey's show, so he had and Second City.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like he didn't have a background. I mean, he was like already a legend. But my first day, within like the first hour there, he grabbed me, put me aside. First thing he said to me was, he told me which ear to talk into because he's deaf in one ear, which is important if you're in the field with somebody, knowing like making sure to be on the right side of him so he could hear you. We just got to know each other really quick, and he said, "All right, let's find a good story. Let's go out there." And I found like the perfect first story.
Wow!
It was a warden at a prison in Utah. And the warden was getting afraid of the inmates because all they would do all day is lift weights. And they were getting so muscle bound that he was afraid that they would mutiny and he would get beaten to a pulp. So he decided to remove all the weightlifting equipment and hire a gourmet chef. So then the inmates were upset because they were getting fat. So we went out to Utah, and back then no one knew who we were. Like you would go, we told them the name of the show was The Daily Show. What channel are you on? Channel 53 or 54.
Cable. Yeah.
What network are you on? We would say, either Time Warner or Viacom because we were owned by half of them. But as long as we didn't say we were Comedy Central, we weren't lying. We just weren't telling them we were a comedy show. So they had no idea that we were trying to be funny, which went a long way to making these pieces work because there's nothing less funny than people trying to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, we didn't want people to be in on a joke. We wanted to approach these stories like you were doing like a real news broadcast. So We went to this prison in Utah, and let me tell you, there's no better feeling than getting out of a prison at the end of the day. It was like- and then Stephen and I, it was the night that Seinfeld's finale, and we got takeout food, sat out of bed together, watched Seinfeld's finale, which was like a 2-hour episode. And during every commercial break, we took turns telling each other our life stories. And that was Steven's idea. Like, that's what kind of guy he is. Like, incredibly inquisitive, wants to get to know you, and he's like the kind of guy you want who would be like your best friend for the rest of your life. And it was an amazing experience working with him.
And just in general, what about working with Craig Kilborn? Or was he basically was there just to sort of read the writer's material and didn't really kind of improvise? Or is that the case?
I'm Craig Kilborn. This is a Daily Show news break.
Craig was, at least with the field department, he was very hands-off compared to when John came in. It was very much, he was the guy who read what was on the prompter. And every once in a while he would catch something on the prompter, like he thought he'd get so proud of himself, like, oh, there's a typo in the prompter. It says Boutros Galley. There's one too many Boutroses. Like he was one of those guys who.
So he was basically Grammarly. That was as far as like interjecting into the script.
Yeah, he played the part perfectly. But we kind of knew he was destined for bigger things. Well, it turned out to be he wasn't destined for bigger things, but he had ambitions beyond what was, at the time, The Daily Show was not watched by a lot of people. I mean, it was every year we were kind of worried that we were going to get canceled. I mean, the numbers were not good, and it took many years to get any sort of traction. It took until about the John with the indecision and the Gore versus Bush thing until that really took off.
Yeah, so Kilburn was there until what, 99? I think he in August. No, I think probably 98, because John started in 99 in January, and he sort of just overnight kind of penned a deal with CBS to replace, I believe, Tom Schneider.
Yeah,
and was that a big shock?
No, because we knew he was sort of destined for bigger things, but it did come as a big surprise, and all of a sudden we're like, okay, we're like doing auditions for a new host.
Yeah, and who else was in that mix?
All right, the people who came and actually did auditions: David Alan Grier, Michael McKean, Mike Rowe, and Jon Stewart. Those were the four. If there was another one, I forgot, but I know those four. We definitely did auditions with them. I lobbied heavily, not that anyone cared what I had to say, but I wanted Norm Macdonald. I thought he would have been.
There you go. That would have been, yeah.
I thought that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
We kind of knew John and Madeline, our showrunner, Madeline Smithberg, had a history. They had worked together on John's previous show, so we kind of knew that it was going to be John, and it was John. Obviously, it was John.
But back then he was like. He had the MTV show.
I am Jon Stewart, ex-volleyball star. Host of MTV's You Wrote It, You Watch It. You send us your letters, so we reenact them.
And, some movie roles like Half-Baked. So, again.
Yeah. And he had obviously a big stand-up career.
Yeah, and Larry Sanders Show.
But if you saw Larry Sanders, you saw that that role. It wasn't quite fictitious. He was playing that guy who was going to replace Larry.
Yeah.
And everyone knew that John was going to keep doing late night. So it was just a matter of where he would end up. So we kind of knew that it was going to be John. And when John came in, it was, the funny thing is, we had two of our big stars on the show, A. Whitney Brown and Brian Unger, quit before John arrived.
Why did A. Whitney Brown, who also San Francisco stand-up comedy legend and also former Saturday Night Live cast member, why did he quit?
And federal prison inmate.
Oh, okay. After Saturday Night Live?
During Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
At certain point. I mean,
he's an interesting character.
He will gladly
started as a street
wax
performer.
Poetic about his time in prison. A. Whitney Brown, super interesting guy, pleasure to work with. I mean, really dark sense of humor. But A. Whitney Brown talked Brian Unger into them both not staying for John, because they thought no matter what, it's always going to be now The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and they would be second fiddles.
And they weren't second fiddles to Craig?
Well, I don't know.
Or
It
they
didn't
were
make sense.
equal fiddles?
But they tried to convince Colbert to join them, and Steve was like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
"No, I'm good. I got a kid. I'm like, I have a wife. I'm good. I need to, you know." So Stephen
And
obviously
was
made
it
the right
Lewis
move.
Black? Did he also make the jump over? Because I believe Lewis Black started roughly around the same time as Colbert on the Daily Show.
Finally, Americans have found a political problem they are willing to come together and do something about. No, not terrorism. Close. It's telemarketing.
I can't remember exactly when Lewis started, but it was definitely around that time. And Beth Luterford stayed from the Craig years to the John years as well. So it was really just those two jumping ship. But eventually, you know, John arrives and the show quickly changes. It really is. And John like put us to school. Like his thing was like, stop making it. This show should not be about making fun of people. This show should be about having every joke having a point of view. We should be parodying the news instead of just like, you know, like we
news
have a whole
style.
world of. So like I couldn't wait to go on the road because I would just flick the channels and watch local news, and I would get so many ideas from watching local broadcasts. So it became like just like anything is fair game, and it just all of a sudden things became a lot easier because instead of just like going for the joke, you're going for like a joke with a purpose. And when you have a point of view, it's a lot easier to land the joke.
So what I read, for me being a armchair comedy history quarterback, is the first piece that became sort of known as the modern day Daily Show as we know it was, I think it was Steve Carell, newly hired Steve Carell, doing a piece on the John McCain bus.
Let's do a lightning round.
Okay.
Your favorite book?
For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Favorite movie?
Viva Zapata.
Charlton Heston.
Marlon Brando.
Close enough. If I were a tree, I would be a...
If I were a tree, I would be a root. What does that mean?
Senator, how do you reconcile the fact that you were one of the most vocal critics of pork barrel politics, and yet, while you were chairman of the Commerce Committee, that committee set a record for unauthorized appropriations? I'm just kidding. I don't even know what that means.
And just a little background. We were always looking for new correspondents, especially after we lost Brian and Nate Whitney Brown. And Stephen kept saying, listen, I got this friend. He's out of work. He lives in LA. He's the funniest guy I know. His name's also Stephen. We should try him out.
Now, the upcoming Supreme Court debate could even be a hotter button issue than Americans not sleeping enough. That's why it's the subject of tonight's Even Steven. You've just made me vomit in my own mouth.
What's the weather like up your own ass? Tonight's topic, should medical marijuana be legalized?
Yes.
No.
Yes!
I kept looking for a piece that we could do somewhere in between New York and LA where he lived. And I found this great story about a guy who was a poisonous snake expert living in Nebraska in this little town. And he was self-taught, by the way. And he was really bad at handling the snakes. So the town was going broke, having to pay for the anti-venom. Like they were coming to his trailer about every week to rescue him after he got bit by one of his snakes. So I went out there with Stephen and met Carell, and I did like a day of like putting him through the ropes and sort of coming up with sort of a persona that he could, because he had never done this before.
Wow.
And he hit it out of the park, although he was scared to death of this guy, of all the snakes that were sort of like had free reign of the double wide where this guy lived. And brought back the footage, and we're all looking at it and we're like, oh my God, this guy just has the perfect combination of arrogance and stupidity. and Carell, so he was like, I did, I don't know, at least a couple of dozen stories with Carell. So he as soon as the 2000 election came, we're like, listen, this is like something that we have to take ownership of. And what was nice is that no one knew who we were. So we could ask the stupid questions and no one thought we were trying to be funny. And Wolf Blitzer, who was a big fan of the show, he would watch it every night on the elliptical. he was sort of our ambassador. He was always seemed to be near me whenever I was doing anything. And he would always like do a little introduction, like, you got to talk to these guys. So he sort of paved the way for a lot of
Did you also know him from your time at CNN?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
Just happened to be a fan of the show. So during the McCain with the Straight Talk Express with the bus, Carell came on and asked like a lot of silly questions, and it was a home run. That was a Nick McKinney piece. Nick McKinney was actually on the bus. Mark McKinney's brother, who's a producer on the show, and
who also the David Tell show, Insomniac.
Yes, very good.
Yeah. we know our comedy history.
There's a lot of it. You know, the weird thing is,
it's all Comedy Central. So yeah,
it's a pretty small world. Yeah. I mean, like when back in the day, like they would announce like the 7 or 8 shows that got greenlit for a pilot on Comedy Central. You knew every single person. You know, nowadays, like it's a whole mystery to me how this comedy world even exists. But back then, it was a pretty insular world.
I just want to backtrack to something I heard when Jon Stewart came on. I think like the first thing he did was he took 5 questions and immediately made it 4 questions. Just to,
he whittled it down by the end.
But there's this clip he's being interviewed by Craig Kilborn. And John's like quote was to Craig was,
"What changes can we expect on
changes?
Yes.
By God, this is the Daily Show, man. What? Why don't I just draw a mustache on the Mona Lisa, for God's sakes? This is the we are just bitches in the wheel of the Daily Show. You know that. You know that better than anybody. We're feeding the beast."
He had apprehension of being, you know, kind of the Ringo to Kilborn's Pete Best. You know, and take it over.
The easiest. I mean, John was super smart when he came in. You don't make waves right away.
Yeah.
You sort of like, so he did the first week, got rid of until that thing was done, and it took for the first couple of months you couldn't really tell the difference, except it was a different host.
Yeah,
and then it was sort of baby steps, and one by one he got rid of a lot of the writers, or he helped get rid of a lot of the writers who were sort of like not in, who didn't sort of drink the Jon Stewart Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
and there was some pushback. Yeah, there was some pushback.
I mean, I read excerpts of the oral history of Comedy Central, not to be Mr. Smarty Pants over someone who was actually there. But
you know what? It's like I read that book too, and like no matter what, I got to say that book, oral history is only as accurate as the people who are interviewed by the author. And having been there, it obviously a lot of it is accurate, but there's a lot of it that was to me was a little questionable. Like for instance, like Carell said, the reason he left the show was he knew the writing was on the wall when he was asked to do this piece called The World Series of Birding, where he would do this 24-hour marathon from midnight to midnight, seeing as many birds as you can see. And I produced that piece.
Oh, okay. All right.
and it was not it was actually like that piece came out great, and he had a lot of fun, and it was like, not to get defensive, but there were a lot of things in that book that were a little inaccurate.
What I found interesting though was like when Stewart came on, like the writers, and tell me if this was true or not, they confronted Stewart and said, we don't want you changing the words to our, jokes, and then Stewart came back and go, fuck you, you're going to be fired.
I did a lot of the writing, but I wasn't on the writing staff per se. I was just, we would write our field pieces. And we worked tightly with them. But so I don't know if that was true or not, but I heard that as well.
Yeah.
And the vibe was from John, like, listen, this is my show.
But it's true. I mean, it did become the Daily Show, It didn't stay the Craig Kilborn show,
Oh, within a year, you forgot about Craig.
Yeah.
I mean, within a month, you forgot about Craig.
And something interesting was, and you brought this up in an email, but then I also read it. It is like also just cable news in general was shifting to, we have to fill a lot of time, and how the Daily Show became the modern Daily Show, correct me if I'm wrong, was the shifting landscape of cable news. And also the politics of the time. You know, it was the election,
Well,
and
all
then
of a sudden,
the Gulf War, and then 9/11, and
well, cable news took a life of its own. I mean, cable news went from something that like news junkies would watch, and it was more like a niche kind of thing to like. I mean, we were watching Fox News grow before our eyes. So all of a sudden, it became this. Cable news became a personality unto itself. So all of a sudden, we went from just like Colbert would parody Stone Phillips from Dateline, and we had little moments like that. But all of a sudden, we had this entire genre of pop culture to parody. So we sort of like The Daily Show was at the right place at the right time as cable news was growing. So able to piggyback on the combination of that and the fact that you had the craziest election where, I remember we had a huge event with the Daily Show on election night, and then waking up in the morning and the TV still being on, and the fact that they didn't know who won. So that for the next 4 months, I was literally like almost every week or 2 weeks going down to either Florida or to the Supreme Court, because it was like, we didn't know who was going to be the next president for months.
And at what point did you start hearing the phrase, I get my news from the Daily Show?
Okay. Well, the funny thing is, I still remember a writer, David Handelman, who I think was doing a piece for New York Magazine or Vanity Fair, I forget which one. He came and spent the day with us, and I was like tasked to be like to him from the shadow me. We had never had a writer do a piece on the show. The only thing we had a blogger who would blog about the show, and we obsessed about her. We couldn't wait to see what her reaction was to each night's broadcast. But that was it. I mean, this was before the internet. I mean, we really when we were doing these pieces, we were looking at newspapers. We subscribed to like hundreds of local papers to get ideas for stories. It was really at the beginning of the internet. So this was like sort of like new to us, like to actually have any sort of attention. So all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, we're hearing that like people actually get their news from us. It was like, not only was it flattering, but we just, we were really like almost everybody on staff. We were not like Ivy League people. I mean, it was very much a working class sort of vibe to the show as far as the crew. We were not like Letterman or where it was all people from the Ivies. Mm-hmm. We sort of prided ourselves on the fact that we were all like Jersey people, or like people who were like just like not Ivies. And then finally I remember these two guys from, I guess they had been on, were they on Conan? Or anyway, they gave us they gave such a great packet that they couldn't say no, and they hired him. It was Charlie Grandy, and I forget the other guy. But anyway, they were so good, and the floodgates opened, and all of a sudden now we had all these Ivy League people. So we became. But when the show started, it was very much like we felt like we were more like a public access show than on a par with the late night shows like Letterman and the Tonight Show. So it was a shock when we finally got a Emmy nomination, and we're all like in LA
what year was the Emmy nomination?
This was after the Indecision, so this would have been 2001.
Okay. Got it. Yep.
Yeah. So this was like, wow. It came as a surprise. It really was. And I think that really helped the show that we were underdogs, and we were a small staff who were with a really strong work ethic. And that we wanted to succeed, but we didn't have the presumption that we were entitled to succeed. So it was.
Did that work ethic come from Jon Stewart, on down, or was the work ethic embedded whoever was the head writer, or Jon Stewart was the head writer?
Well, I mean, John was definitely not the head writer, but it came from everybody. I mean, I think first and foremost it came from Madeline Smithberg, who. She came from Letterman. She was in charge of Stupid Human Tricks. That was her little department at Letterman, and she adored the field department. So that's what I think made the show succeed so well. Is those field pieces were the ones that sort of put us on the map. And her favorite hour of the entire week was the pitch meetings, where we would come in and pitch our stories for field pieces, and it was. You knew if you got the laugh from Madeline, you got the green light, and she had this tremendous laugh.
both walk us through like the process of a field piece and then segue that into some of your favorite that best exemplify, what you want on your Mount Rushmore of hits?
As far as a field piece goes, a lot of times it was something as quirky as just finding like a little news story we had one where I was really into Civil War reenactments. And I thought we should do, this was less like, let's parody news. But instead, I had just watched Gettysburg, and then I was really obsessed with watching these Ken Burns documentaries. And I thought they were just so precious. And like, there's got to be a way that we could like parody that. So we came up with the idea called Casualties of Reenactments of War. Because I read a story about how someone had gotten injured during Civil War reenactment. So we're like, let's go to a Civil War reenactment and just interview the people and find out what kind of like ailments are they getting. So we went to one in West Virginia. This was a Steve Carell piece. And shot it like we were shooting a Ken Burns documentary, and we did it like in black and white with the
Burns
letters
effect on the photos.
And like, dear Juanita, pray for me because tomorrow I'm scheduled to play dead, that kind of thing. And I remember going into the voiceover booth with Carell, so we went out there, we shot the piece, come back, and then you have the loggers who sort of like go through the entire, like, sometimes it's hours and hours of footage. And I came up with a system a star system where like 2 stars if they think something's kind of funny, 3 stars if it's really funny, and then like 4 stars, this will bring the house down. So all of a sudden it made the loggers kind of like have sort of like their opinion matters.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden it's like, and some of those loggers have turned out to be like, are running their own shows now. So it was like sort of nice to get the loggers who were the PAs to be like more involved in the piece. And then I'd meet with the logger and go over like, sort of like bounce off some ideas with them, and then meet with the researcher. And then I would write a script. Then I would sit down with the correspondent and go over the script, and then we'd punch it up. And then go into the voiceover booth, have them. So like with Carell, with the Casualty of Reenactments of War, we did, I think, over 30 takes on the first line of the piece, and he couldn't get it. And I'm like, and he didn't want to just give up. And I'm like, I kept pushing him, and I'm like, I'm being kind of like kind of mean. Like, this is like, you don't do this with talent. And then finally, like on the 31st take, he got it. And then boom, he just read every single line perfect throughout there. But it's all about the point of view and getting your voice. And he got that perfect voice a la Ken Burns. And I had watched like the entire Ken Burns Civil War doc. So to me, in my head, I had that voice, but he didn't have it. And then once he got it, boom. And it was like the perfect story, because it was like people complaining about like this bunions, people complaining about chafing. And we had like these great cinematographers and sound people. Like wherever we went, we would hire a local crew because it was too expensive to just travel with our own people. And you would just it was just beautifully shot. So that was sort of like, that was one of the, I think, pieces that really put Carell on the map. And it was different than your traditional kind of piece.
Where do you think the Daily Show's place is in comedy history?
I mean, that's a tough question. And again, I was only there for 5 years. I was there from 98 to 2002.
But these were like the most formative years, because you saw the transition, the origin story almost. And then you were there for when, David Banner turns into the Incredible Hulk. Where it got its legs,
I'll consider it the glory years, because it's almost like, to me, it's always more interesting, like the story until you make it. When I left right when the show became a huge hit, and I feel that it's definitely, as far as like in the history of comedy, it is going to rank up there as one of the big success stories, because it basically created a genre. And so many people now, in fact, like I after the Daily Show, I went to Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn.
Yeah.
And we helped launch that show. And I would pitch ideas to Colin, and he would stop me in my tracks. That's a Daily Show piece. So, and like, we would like, and then like Mo Rocca, who was one of our correspondents, he would go on auditions years later, and he'd go to the audition and he'd see the list of like the character he is like reading for, and it would say Mo Rocca type. So, you make it if you're auditioning to be yourself.
Yeah, and also not getting the part maybe sometimes.
Yeah,
but it's
you're too on the nose.
Yeah, you're too more Rocca for that.
Too more Rocca. But yeah, I think we really found a niche that nobody else had, and we're able to capitalize on that. And I mean, my God, how many shows have lasted that long? It definitely like. When you think of all the careers that that show had launched, also, I mean, we knew Colbert was going to go places, because John did a movie called, he left for I think 2 weeks to do a movie called Death to Smoochie,
A Robin Williams movie with Edward Norton.
Yeah. And so while John was gone, each of the correspondents got a chance to be the fill-in host. And Stephen took it so seriously, not like not in a bad way. He knew that this was an opportunity that he had to capitalize upon, and he hit it out of the park. And we knew, like, we're watching him do it, and we're like, oh, this guy's going to have his own show. So, and then we all followed him to Montclair. He's now my neighbor. It's like,
Wait, Colbert's your neighbor?
Yeah. He's like, it's.
He's writing away the next Lord of the Rings movie.
Exactly. But it's like nice to run into him in town, like at the supermarket. He's like the most like down to earth person. His wife did run the Montclair Film Festival. She was the president. They give back a ton to the community, and he teaches at the Catholic school, catechism, or whatever. I forget. But yeah, he's like that kind of guy.
Okay. Yeah,
teaches
that.
Yeah. I'm a Jew. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the nicest guy in the world. And it's so nice when I do run into him that like we have this, like, no matter what, it's like we could just talk for hours about because this is before we made it. This was like our origin story. This was the moment.
It was your garage band days.
Yeah. We were underdogs. We were like, we were like the opening act. We didn't know. BattleBots was our lead in. We never knew if we were going to get renewed.
Yeah.
But it's like, we never thought in a million, like, I never thought, like, same with Carell. Like, I watched The Office now, and I'm like, here's a guy, when we went on our first piece together, we were ordering two entrees and splitting them both. It's like that's the kind of guy he is.
Yeah.
And I watch The Office now, or reruns The Office, and I'm like, I can't believe that's the same guy who I was like on a boat with in the middle of Lake Champlain, like searching for the Lake Champlain monster. It's like, but you got to, as they say, you got to start somewhere. And I feel like really blessed that I was in the right place at the right time. And though those years, I guess in the history of the show, I produced more field pieces than anybody, mainly because back then there was only like 4 or 5 producers. So like you were like literally like doing one every 2 weeks, and you were like constantly on the road. I was in 47 states like during my time, like just always on the road. And and we were also there for 9/11. I produced the first piece that we aired when John came back after September 11th.
Yeah, I mean, don't gloss over that. What was that like? I mean, it was like the big thing was like, irony's dead, comedy's dead.
Well, I was on the phone with Madeline Smithberg, the showrunner, watching New York 1 as the first plane hit, and I call her up. We would commute to work a lot together. She lived down the street from me and on the Upper West Side, and we're watching this together. And within like half an hour, we're like, there's no show today, obviously. So we weren't on the air for weeks, and it was like, can we be funny again? How can we do this? And we started thinking how baby steps. The idea I had was, there was a show called Wild On. I don't know if you remember it. It was, you would do like Wild On Aruba, like 24 hours, like nightclubs, wild, crazy. So I'm like, let's do Wild On Delaware Water Gap. Find the most benign, which turned into Wild On Amish country. So we went to the Amish country, and sort of like, we just had to find something that didn't trigger anything that could possibly like you think about what happened. So that was the hardest thing, like finding like a soft turn to get us there without like with without hurting the feelings of people and without making it seem like that we were not caring. Because it's like, yeah, it's like making a joke at a funeral. And
Yeah.
this funeral just like would not stop. So I had done a piece with this guy, Charles Doty, who had run for president like 8 times in a row.
Uh-huh.
And he had like a version of the Straight Talk Express. It was in his van that was like needed a new muffler. And he smoked like 4 packs of Kents a day and talked with a gravelly voice. And he became like a breakout cult star on the show. So after our first time back, after John did his monologue, he had a little bit of he had a tear in his eye. We cut the commercial when he came back. He was a little, I would say, embarrassed that he was crying, but he like, he felt a little bit like that he'd gotten it out of his system. It's like, all right, now he introduced the piece and we showed the Charles Doty piece. And to me, it's like a real badge of honor that was a piece that I had produced. That was the first piece that we showed after when we came back on the air.
Yeah, I mean, amazing.
But that was tricky.
Yeah, you just don't know. I mean, not like, for example, The Onion kind of took the opposite approach. It just like, let's face this head on.
Yeah.
But that was also very effective,
Yeah, although John made that great point where the view out of his window used to be the Trade Center, the Twin Towers, and now the Trade Centers, they're gone, but now I could see the Statue of Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing, the one thing about, most of us lived in New York City, was the fact that we were able to experience this whole thing together. So I couldn't imagine, like, we were like family. We were family. So to be able to experience what happened after that and to sort of get back on the feet was really important. And we felt like our fans kind of were counting on us to like tell us it's okay to laugh again.
Yeah. The difficulty, like SNL had its issues, everyone had with the comeback, after 9/11 dilemma.
Yeah, nobody teaches you that. Yeah, nobody teaches you that in comedy school.
Yeah.
And looking back, there was never like, we were like, is there a precedent for this? I mean, I guess there was like whatever, like after like the Kennedy assassination with late night, whatever. But for us, we were like, we had no idea. We were just winging it. It was like sort of like just trust our instincts. And, and John was a great leader. And as far as like taking us out of that,
What do you think when people try to emulate The Daily Show from a right-wing perspective? Like, I guess on Fox, they have, what's that guy's name? Guffman? I don't know. But what do, yeah.
Well, all right.
What do they always get wrong?
Well, you've opened a huge can of worms.
Yeah.
Because I was actually hired.
Oh.
Yes. I was hired by the Fox network they were trying to create a Fox version of 60 Minutes. And I was hired to be the comic relief at the end of the show. So
but you were the Andy Rooney.
I was the Andy Rooney. And I would do these quirky pieces. It was the last piece at the end of the show. And it was like, all of a sudden, I was like the Seinfeld episode, like the opposite with George, where you just do no matter what your instinct is, you just do the opposite. So all of a sudden, I'm pitching what I normally would do this way. I would just do the opposite. And I'm like, brilliant, go ahead and do it. So it was a show called The Pulse, which aired on Wednesday nights in prime time. And it only lasted for a few months. But then, this is even crazier. Years later, I got a call from CNN. There was a guy named Glenn Beck. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah, he's Glenn Beck.
Yeah, Glenn Beck.
Glenn Beck as in, you mean Glenn Beck as in Glenn Beck?
As in Glenn Beck. I had never heard of him.
Right.
No, like he was a huge star in flyover states. Nobody in New York knew who he was. He had the third most popular radio show in the country. They wanted to give him a show on HLN, which is the sister network to CNN. And CNN, the development team, brought me in to sort of make him a late night host. So I actually was responsible for Glenn Beck, his first show on television. And if you look back, you can see some of the stuff on YouTube. It was a much different Glenn Beck and a much different kind of show, kind of when he was at HLN, and he realized quickly no one watched because his fans thought CNN was the cable. CNN stood for the Communist News Network.
Yeah. But
So-
comedy wise, what are they getting wrong? I mean, again, it's just like there are good comedy writers you could get, and there are good field producers you could get. Why are they not hitting? I mean, because you have, conservative people watching The Daily Show and still, or like when it was the Colbert Report, and still enjoying it somewhat.
Well, I mean, I gotta tell you,
People can't laugh at themselves. I don't know.
A lot of people were watching the Colbert Report and not realizing
getting the joke. Yeah.
that he was playing a character. They watched it on a completely different plane
on the service
than we were watching it.
Yeah.
I think it can succeed. I mean, Glenn actually, like the first couple, I was only a very short time with Glenn Beck before I realized it was not a fit for me, and I ended up leaving that show until he left to go to Fox, and I came back, and then I produced Joy Behar's show.
Wow.
That's like a fun cable news fact. Joy Behar replaced Glenn Beck.
Okay.
So I went back, and then I produced Joy's show for several years at HLN and then at Current TV. But I think that the thing that they do, like obviously if you just watched Trump the other night with the Correspondents' Dinner, I think the thing, and it's what John taught us, is like you got to go after the big guys. You can't
be the big guys going after the little guys, the people not in power. It's
you have to go after
comedy
the people
101 of the punch up, punch down theory.
It's total 101, and they obviously don't get it. And you watch Trump try to land a joke. I mean, it's incredibly painful because he's as powerful as he gets.
Yeah,
and also it's like, have you ever seen the guy laugh?
Only when he's mocking people.
Yeah, but never. I've literally never heard a genuine laugh out of his mouth, which I think tells you something right there.
Yeah. One thing I read was like on just because he brought up Trump on the early Kilborn years. I think it was Beth Littleford, if I pronounce her name correctly.
Yeah.
She did a piece with Trump on it was called the Model Olympics. Do you remember that at all?
I do not remember that one.
Okay, because it was with Trump. She was the correspondent, and he would have models on the beach of Florida do kind of like little stunts. So I just wonder if you were there for that or had any
I was
recollection
not there for that. But I got to say, it is a crime that like right now I would be looking it up on the internet, and it used to be.
I looked. They bleached all the old episodes on YouTube. They're not there. Like all the different episodes.
The Kilborn episodes never made it to the archives, which to me is a crime. And everyone who's ever worked at that show, it's part of history. Yeah. And that is that's part of the golden age. Like that year, right leading up to John. I mean, from the time I was there, I mean, it was great from the beginning, but there are some like moments there that are legendary. And for the Comedy Central people to think that the show just began when John arrived doesn't disservice to all the people who work there. Exactly. You got to see how it evolved. But it is a crime that Paramount has just for some reason they're like, it's not worth the energy bill for our servers to keep the archives alive. It used to be before Paramount took over, you could literally, someone would mention like the most obscure fact to me, and I did a Daily Show piece on that. Within 10 seconds, you watch a 15-second ad and you're watching the piece. Literally every single day, every single broadcast in that history, just go to that date and you can find it. And now it's not only buried behind a paywall, but I think they only have the last few years. So you can't even access anything from there. And to me, that should be like in the Smithsonian. That should be like part of it's part of our like cultural heritage.
Exactly. And just a few last questions here. You sent me a clip of you that you produced with Colbert of the Cookie Monster. Is that your favorite Colbert bit that you did with him?
That's the piece I really should have used as my example of.
Yeah. We're going to get to the cookies in a second, but first I just want to talk about the production release. In consideration of my desire to participate in this videotape, to edit at our discretion, in perpetuity throughout the universe, in connection herewith.
Mommy.
So I just need a signature on that, and then we'll get to the cookies.
That's my son in the piece, by the way. And just so people realize, we did a story called C is for Chubby. One morning, my son is watching Sesame Street, and he sees the Cookie Monster. And my son, who's like 2 at the time, is like, "Me want cookie." And I'm like, "What do you? It's like 6 a.m. You want a cookie?" And then I see what he's watching. So I'm like, Sesame Street, for like such this responsible, like parent-friendly kind of like broadcast, is promoting excessive cookie eating for children. That's like that's the perfect target to go after. So I booked a dietitian, I booked a drug therapist to go after the Cookie Monster's like addiction to sugar, and we did a hard-hitting expose on the Cookie Monster, and I would. This was like the perfect piece for the Daily Show, because not only did it like take something and turn it on its, spin it and do a complete 180, but I was able to like change the course of history, at least like in this tiny little like moment. And I suggested to the nutritionist that maybe he should be to promote healthy eating instead. Long story short, the piece airs. Within a few months, the Cookie Monster, they announce on PBS some sort of, see the press release, the Cookie Monster is now going to promote healthy food habits for kids.
Yeah, the Carrot Monster was one of the...
Yeah, exactly. It's the Carrot Monster. the Fiber Monster.
Yeah, the Fiber Monster.
But and we shot that in that moment you saw with my kid, that was in our living room. So I can't tell you how many times my kid, my son was actually a moment of zen 3 minutes after he was born. It was like, one thing about having kids, if you ever need a kid in your piece, you use your kids, because like
there you go.
There you go, they're right here, and you don't have to sign a release. So my son at least was like, like he literally has an IMDb from like 2 minutes old for the Daily Show.
Excellent. A quick jumping off point, where can people find you?
Well, people can find me. I now produce a show called On Patrol Live on the Reels Network with Dan Abrams as the host, and we are embedded with 10 police departments around the country. It's funny, it's serious, it's like you see the fabric of America. 3 hours a night, 9 to midnight, Friday and Saturdays, and I'm also president of the Montclair Bird Club.
Nice.
So if you're into birds and you're into comedy, this is the guy to talk to.
Evan, so nice to meet you. Thank you so much. I love the stories and.
Oh, thanks. It's a pleasure. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I was looking forward to having some time to meet you and to share some of these stories. So it was a hoot.
All right, keep in touch, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks.
Care. Bye.
Later on.
And with that, we wrap up today's episode on Comedy History 101. You got schooled in comedy. A few clarifications from the episode. The R.J. Cutler documentary we were talking about, but did not name, is called The War Room. Also, a few other comedians who auditioned to replace Craig Kilborn on The Daily Show included Greg Proops and Beth Littleford. And the Uncle Floyd Show, which we mentioned, had such fans as John Lennon and David Bowie. In fact, David Bowie wrote the song Slip Away as a tribute to Uncle Floyd. That's all very interesting. And again, the quick plugs on Thursday, August 20th, 7 o'clock at Young Ethel's in Brooklyn. I'll be presenting my show, That 80s Improv Challenge. And on August 27th, 8 o'clock at the Pine Box Rock Shop in Brooklyn, I'll be presenting my show, AI versus Human Roast Battle. And on August 28th, 7:30 at the Red Room, Tale, NYC's finest storytelling. And you can find out all about my show dates on my site, HarmonLeon.com, or follow me on the social medias at HarmonLeon. Also, like, subscribe, comment, share an episode with a friend of Comedy History 101. Give us 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, Every little bit helps, and we love bringing you these episodes. And until next time, bye-bye.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid. I'm trying to use the phone.
Comedy History 101.